超ビー見ようぜ。超ビーの解説ってことこれが。やっと見れる。よし。ありえない。超ビーがやってるありえないこと。
Esports collaboration. This time around, we'll be taking a look at the teaching section. We just want to show you a taste of what Chovy does to his lane opponents every game, so you can get an idea of why it's impossible to win versus him even at the highest level, starting with a small but clean outplay versus Faker. In this game, Faker finds himself in an amazing spot as Talia versus Chovy's Azir. Usually when players have no minions to block for them, Talia has a massive upper hand in the matchup, but watch how Chovy handles this situation.
どうやってやるんだろう。敵のスキルベイトするとかじゃないの。
He knows Faker is feeling confident at the moment, so he pauses, waits for him to walk up, and autos the minion to hit Faker and prep it to CS later at the same time. Then, he perfectly tracks Faker's Q cooldown, coming back up, baits it out, spacing every rock perfectly. And then, he secures all CS without breaking a sweat in a situation that was terrible for him to begin with. Better yet, let's take a look at this game versus Showmaker, where Damwon used 2 flashes to take him down early on into the lane. Showmaker gets to base with tier 2 boots versus this extremely weak purchase from Chovy. Everyone knows how annoying it feels to play a skill shot mage versus someone who buys early boots. Being behind this much power and movement speed early on would spell disaster for most laners. But even in terrible circumstances, Chovy keeps a level head. It's easy to time when your opponent bases. He's probably aware that Showmaker's recall went off right about now. But the difference between Chovy and every other Talia in this situation is that he realizes this means that Showmaker is going to be ahead of his next spawning wave. You might think, okay, who cares? But to Chovy, that's somehow a lane-winning moment. He walks up and spawns 2 pieces of work ground in front of the wave. Then, when Showmaker arrives in lane, he has no creeps to stand behind to block spells. Remember, they're all the way back there. So, now Chovy lands a nasty combo to chunk Showmaker right as he gets back to lane. Chovy went from being double flashed on with a massive item disadvantage to somehow having permanent priority in the matchup. He's helping secure Dragon and has priority for grubs too. He should not have this much control after getting ganked like that. And it's not just those big moments that make Chovy so good. It's every second of the laning phase feeling like a horror game for his opponents. While playing Chovy versus Knight's Tristana at MSI, every second of this lane was just painful for Knight, which is fair. Chovy is a lane bully early on. Knight correctly builds Merc Treads to try and survive the matchup, but it's no use. You guys know how casters harp on and on about Chovy's CS, but he doesn't build those leads by just last hitting better than his opponents. It's because he's generally outlaning everyone every single game and fighting aggressively on every single CS. Meanwhile, he's always completely calm and rarely missing a last hit of his own, since he's always outtrading everyone. Knight is losing so hard that he can't even bail out by his team. He's losing even while getting help. But you will never be able to appreciate just how insane Chovy is at every little detail of the laning phase with these short snippets. So instead, we'll break down a matchup between Chovy and top esports Cream that happened at MSI. You're about to see a masterclass in laning, and we're going to walk you through and teach you some of the skills that Chovy utilizes to make one of the best players in the world look like a complete amateur in just 3 minutes. What we're going to focus on specifically in this lane is how Chovy plays around enemy cooldowns better than anyone else in the world, to a level you would not believe. To show you how Chovy does all this and more, let's jump right into the laning phase with Chovy on Azir versus Cream's Corki. While these aren't the most aggressive early game champions, you're soon going to see just how tense Chovy makes every lane, regardless of what he's playing and up against. Now, to truly appreciate just how hard Chovy will outplay Cream during this lane, you need to know that they're not just playing around their own champion's ability cooldowns. A ton of damage or utility can actually come from your keystones in mid, and to truly become an expert at spacing around your opponents, you need to think of keystones as an extra cooldown for every champion. Azir is running Hail of Blades, while Corki has First Strike. Keep these runes in mind, as you'll soon see how almost everything Chovy is doing is based on playing around these 2 setups. Before the lane starts, Chovy clears a ward at blue buff. In doing so, he gets to lane late, while Cream was already auto-attacking the wave a bit and getting in position. Basically, since he's late, Chovy will have to work hard to get wave control back. He spawns a soldier to hit the melee minions so he can push. Chovy knows that Corki's first strike is up and doesn't want to let him proc it for free. Corki's E has decent range, so Chovy spawns a soldier in between them. Now he can't walk up for free. Then he continues hitting the wave. Due to the 2 soldiers blocking the way, Corki navigates his GPS and takes a big detour around mid lane, trying to find an angle to fight and proc his rune. And when he's there, Chovy spawns yet another soldier to block him. An extremely important thing to understand about League is that most players have a bit of a patience meter, as many of you may know. If all you do is deny someone from what they want to do, they can start to get frustrated and potentially make a mistake. It's like playing safe versus Yasuo. The champion can't do anything when you sit under tower all game. So many Yasuo players eventually get bored and try to tower dive you, giving you a free kill. Obviously, no one would do anything ridiculous like that, but think about the entire lane. All Chovy has done is deny Corki's first strike. The point of the rune is to proc it as much as possible. It's not much, but Cream is probably a little annoyed. Chovy knows Cream really wants to proc his rune. If you ever feel like your opponent is potentially starting to get antsy to do something, you want to give them a little nudge to bait them into making a mistake. There is zero reason to walk up here as Azir. He can't trade, he has no soldiers left, and no last hits to get. And as you can see, Cream was so desperate to proc his rune that he didn't consider that Chovy was just baiting him. To be fair though, this was perfect spacing. Chovy is just at the tip of that E, and Cream probably thought he was going to get the damage off. Except pure tilt. Cream is so mad that he's wasting his E that he runs through Chovy's soldier. Chovy procs his Hail of Blades and gets a very good trade-off. Right after that trade, a super important moment in the lane is coming up, level 2 timers. Obviously, hitting level 2 first will give either of them a cooldown advantage, so they're both going to rush for it now. There's one thing to keep in mind though, Chovy knows that he'll level up off of one more caster minion. Remember, he got extra experience from killing this ward by himself. Cream, on the other hand, got no extra XP, so he'll get it from the usual melee minion on the second wave. So they both rush to hit the minions. This right caster minion was lower HP, and it looks like the wave is going to hit it, so Chovy focuses it, but the minions randomly switch targets and go hit the full HP one. This is where Chovy shows us just how absurd of a player he honestly is. He actually adapts to that bit of RNG, which is such a ridiculously heads-up play. We checked. It would still take him 3 soldier autos to finish off the right caster, but with the help of his wave, it will only take 2 autos to kill the full HP one. He realized that at a moment's notice and adapted to hit level 2 slightly faster. This is some crazy awareness. The reason this matters so much is that the goal was to hit level 2 first and throw a soldier on Cream. Because it has 2 autos worth of HP left, Cream couldn't just sit there tanking the soldier, which would delay his level 2. Okay, pay attention. We'll be quizzing you in a minute on what's about to happen next, so watch carefully. Cream has his E up, so he presses it. Now he can kill the minion in one auto while trading at the same time. This way, he gets level 2 mid-trade and fights back very favorably. That was unfortunate. The reason it happened is because Cream's E came off cooldown right as Chovy was looking to punish with his level 2. We think Chovy mistimed Corki's E by fractions of a second, and sadly, this results in a poor trade by him, but a well-played one by Cream. He's at MSI for a reason, obviously. But that moment brings us to our special skill cap tip for this guy. When playing against the very best in the world, these players are required to try and track each other's cooldowns perfectly, otherwise, small mistakes like that can be punished hard. We don't expect you to be on that level, but there is one cooldown you should always be tracking perfectly, no matter what. Like we mentioned, your opponent's keystone plays a big part in how often they can and want to trade. The next tip is something most high elo players do, but at skill capped, we noticed very few low elo players actually take advantage of. In lane, you always want to have your opponent's HUD open. There's quite a bit of information you can track here, but the main focus for this guide is your opponent's rune. It tells you when their keystone is going to be up. This gives you very good insight into your opponent's mindset. What Chovy does next relies on it. He starts moving up the lane a bit just before Cream's first strike is up. However, this is similar baiting to before. He has no reason to do this. Chovy's Q and Hail of Blades are down. He does not want to trade right now. Cream, on the other hand, does want to trade with his Q and first strike. So, Chovy is just pretending to give Cream exactly what he wants, but spacing perfectly enough so he can dodge the Q at the last moment. You can see how his spacing isn't crazy mechanical reactions, it's just predictions based on simple information. Now he can knock off Corki's first strike for free, yet again. From here, Chovy does something important. He's going to pressure Cream on this last hit. That's just good to do in general, but it's also necessary because it delays the crash at his tower. The reason that matters is because he wants his incoming wave to stall like this under his tower for as long as possible. What this does is make the ensuing wave crash happen much closer to his turret. Basically, he can now play fully relaxed without fear of ganks. Meanwhile, Cream has to be quite more wary of being flanked. This matters for champions who can skip a utility spell at level 3. Corki is one of those champions. Chovy consistently skips a point in W at level 3 to put an extra point in his Q. This gives him more power in trades with a more effective cooldown. By keeping the wave here, he'll basically be forcing Cream to go W at level 3, making his trading weaker. Okay, so with the wave in a good spot, you're about to see some ridiculous laning out of Chovy. Same as before, they're both about to level up, which is a big moment in the lane. First, Chovy places a soldier right on the incoming wave to push, but it's also between Cream and his own minions. This was a read, knowing that Cream was about to turn to hit the wave. Then, they both hit the wave as much as possible to go for level 3. To really appreciate what happens next, we need to break it down into two parts. First is playing around level ups properly. Many players make the mistake of waiting to level up and then walking to trade, but this gives your opponent way too much time to react.
これ俺が一生言ってるやつや。レベル上がる前に近づけて。
in lower brackets. Secondly, one of the most reliable ways to bait an opponent's spell is to fake a movement command that they're already expecting. If they're expecting it, then they're probably going to instinctively press their spell the second that you input that fake movement. Let's take a look back at that opening clip we showed you of Chovy outplaying Faker. If you remember, Faker uses his Q to crash these 3 minions into the tower. Then Chovy last hits 1 minion, but he's timing when Faker's Q is about to be up. The second that it is, he inputs a fake movement command, bluffing that he's going to commit and go for this last hit. This is why Faker fell for the bluff. He probably thought that Chovy didn't track his Q cooldown properly. Faker was waiting for Chovy to turn around at some point, so when he sees this moment, he's baited into pressing his spell. Back to our game. Both players are fighting for level 3, so Chovy will use Cream's information against him. Chovy is going to hit 3 first when this melee dies, so he inputs a movement command indicating that he's probably moving up to this area before it's even dead. Cream knows that Chovy is a good player, so when he sees Azir's model start walking this way, he knows that Chovy is likely going to play aggressively in this area with his level lead. But Chovy reads that Cream was aware of the situation and baits out the spell with perfect spacing yet again. Okay, we hope you didn't forget our earlier lesson. It's quiz time. Let's switch to Corky's HUD for a moment. Think about everything we've covered so far. What is Cream going to do as Chovy moves in to punish?
何?
Remember, we're playing around cooldowns, and he's got Taste of Blood and First Strike coming up at the same time. Likewise, this is a very similar situation to what we saw before. Cream has his E, and he can turn on Chovy while killing these minions hitting level 3 during the trade. And on top of that, another important fundamental is at play here. Chovy is in range of 3 casters and the cannon minion. He'd get aggro from all of them if he trades. Meanwhile, Cream is only in range of these 2 melees, which he can easily kite. This means that Chovy is messing up and walking right into, and of course, it was a bait. Chovy perfectly spaces Cream's E yet again, and that was the last hope Cream had of turning this lane around. From there, Chovy can easily knock Corky's first strike off once more, and at this point, it's mostly Cream conceding and trying to get as much CS as he can before he shamefully has to base. That was such a great moment, beautifully demonstrating Chovy's awareness of his opponent's cooldowns throughout the lane. After dodging this Q and securing the level lead, most players would instinctively just run at Corky, thinking the trade would be one-sided. But even with such an overwhelming advantage, Chovy continues to put himself in his opponent's shoes, thinking about what spells he might still need to worry about and how his opponent might use them. Then he completely crushes Cream because of it. That lane was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Chovy's laning skill, but it really highlights how detail-oriented Chovy is about every single second of the lane phase. He's playing on the edge of perfection, and there's a reason that no one can come close to his laning skill at the moment. He almost always walks away with a lead in mid, setting Gen G up for success as they transition into the mid and late game. And that's what you should be doing too in your own solo queue games. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
ただこれ以上に上手いのがエディさんなんだよな